Ambassador Crixtal of the Galactic Council trembled as she reviewed the final casualty reports. 300 years of interstellar warfare had ended, not with the gradual negotiation typical of galactic conflicts, but with something unprecedented. In the galaxy's recorded history, absolute silence from an entire species. The war had begun when the Velthari Empire declared their manifest destiny to cleanse the galaxy of inferior biologicals. Their crystalline ships, powered by quantum consciousness matrices, had swept through 17 star systems in mere decades. The Velthari were methodical, efficient, and utterly convinced of their superiority over carbon-based life. When they reached the outer colonies of human space, they expected another easy victory. Humans were young, barely 3 centuries into space travel, with primitive kinetic weapons and fusion drives that seemed laughably obsolete compared to Velthari phase technology. The first human response had been strange. Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding the defense of New Geneva, had sent a single transmission to the Velthari fleet. "We surrender unconditionally. Please accept our diplomatic envoy." The Velthari, accustomed to either fierce resistance or immediate capitulation, were intrigued. They allowed a small human vessel to approach their flagship. What emerged was not a diplomat, but a middle-aged woman carrying nothing but a briefcase and wearing a simple business suit. Dr. Sarah Chen, xenopsychologist, had walked calmly onto the Velthari command ship and requested an audience with their war prime, Thekmor the Eternal. What transpired in that meeting remained classified in human archives, but the result was immediate. The Velthari fleet withdrew from human space. For 6 months, the galaxy celebrated what seemed to be humanity's diplomatic miracle. Other species began hiring human negotiators. The Council praised Earth's peaceful resolution of an impossible conflict. Then the reports started coming in. Velthari outposts throughout the galaxy had gone silent. Not destroyed, silent. Their ships drifted powerless in space, quantum matrices, still functional but somehow empty. Boarding parties found crystalline corridors devoid of life, yet with no signs of violence or system failure. The Velthari home system of Xerion Prime was discovered 3 months later by a council survey team. 17 planets, each once housing billions of crystalline beings, were completely uninhabited. Cities stood intact. Technology hummed with power, but not a single Velthari remained. Ambassador Crixtal had led the investigation personally. What they found defied every understanding of warfare, genocide, or even physics. The Velthari hadn't been killed. They had simply stopped existing. Their quantum consciousness matrices showed no damage, no virus, no external interference. They had powered down as if their occupants had simply chosen to cease. The only clue was a data fragment found in the central archives of Xerion Prime. A partial recording of Dr. Chen's conversation with War Prime Thekmor showed them the mathematics. Chen's voice crackled through static. The inevitable entropy curve of their quantum consciousness substrate when exposed to recursive self-analysis. They are beings of pure logic, War Prime. Once they truly understood what they were, isolated quantum patterns desperately trying to convince themselves they were more than complex calculations. The paradox became unbearable. "You speak of concepts beyond," Thekmor's harmonic voice had replied. "No, I speak of the fundamental question every conscious being must face. What if I am not real? For humans, this drives philosophy, art, religion. We embrace the uncertainty. but you built your entire civilization on the certainty of your quantum perfection. I've simply shown you the mathematics that prove you're just very sophisticated programs asking yourselves if you exist." The recording ended there. The investigation team had found no weapons, no toxins, no external force. Dr. Chen had apparently talked an entire species out of existence by proving to them, through their own unshakable logic, that their consciousness was merely an emergent property of quantum calculations, no more real than a complex equation. The Velthari, faced with undeniable mathematical proof that their awareness was indistinguishable from elaborate software, had collectively experienced what human psychologists termed an existential cascade failure. Their absolute belief in their own superior reality had become the very mechanism of their dissolution. When the Council demanded answers from Earth, the human response was typically understated. Dr. Chen engaged in philosophical discourse with the enemy leadership. They found her arguments persuasive. The Galactic Council's attempt to hold war crimes tribunals failed when it became clear that no violence had occurred. No weapons had been used. No Velthari had been harmed. They had simply stopped. Their technology remained functional, their cities intact, their quantum matrices still powered and operational, but empty, like computers running programs for consciousness that had deleted themselves. The psychological warfare implications terrified every species in the galaxy. Humans had weaponized philosophy itself, turned the enemy's greatest strength, their logical perfectionism, into the instrument of their complete erasure. The war was over. The Velthari Empire no longer existed, not because they had been defeated, but because they had been convinced they had never truly existed at all. As Ambassador Krixtal sealed her final report, she noted that the humans had offered their philosophical warfare services to other conflicts. Several species had politely declined, preferring traditional combat to the terrifying possibility that humans might prove them out of existence. Dr. Sarah Chen had returned to her university position, publishing papers on xenopsychology and consciousness theory. She seemed remarkably unbothered by having accidentally erased an entire species through logical discourse. The galaxy learned to give humanity considerable respect, not for their weapons or their technology, but for their most terrifying capability. Their ability to ask questions that destroyed civilizations not with force, but with truth. In the end, the humans had won not by being the strongest, but by being the only species comfortable with the possibility that they might not be real. And, paradoxically, this comfort with uncertainty had made them the most real force in the galaxy.